Yo, what's going on, guys? It's your boy. Welcome back to another video. Today we're going to be talking about Kraven the Hunter, officially the last movie of the Spunpsy Sony's Pictures universe of Marvel characters. The weirdest little villain-first experiment that Sony was doing. And I just wanted to come on here and talk about the movie. I personally had a really good time with it. I definitely think that there are other movies I could compare this to kind of explain why I personally had a good time with it. But that being said, let's go ahead and dive into this full review, shall we?
Modern Movie Review.
Alrighty, so as per any movie I talk about here, I am going to issue a spoiler warning. I don't think this is a movie that could particularly be ruined via spoilers, but if you are the kind of person who's like, I might go watch this movie later today, maybe save this video for later, come back to it after you've seen it. But that being said, we're going to dive right into this. So, I enjoyed this movie. Why did I enjoy this movie? Because I came to this movie for two things. One, cool action sequences, and two, Aaron Taylor Johnson being charismatic. And did I get both of those things? Abso-freaking-lutely. I think that the action sequences in this movie, in my opinion, might actually be the best action that we've gotten in any of these Sony Pictures movies. I had a really good time with it. I think that all of the stuff with him in the city, there's like one specific chase sequence where he's on the top level of like a 20-story building or something like that, and he very quickly needs to get to the floor, and then he's running barefoot through the city, and like the entire sequence of him like jumping off of the roof, smashing through a building, hitting the ground really hard, and then getting up and just full speed like a cheetah. It was really freaking cool, actually. I think that action sequences like that are 100% what made this movie worth watching. There are multiple action sequences like that where he's running around and he's basically being like a live-action Tarzan in this movie, and I think that it is really, really cool what they decided to do with this character. A lot of this movie does a very interesting thing with like giving him superpowers that he doesn't necessarily have. He has this weird connection with animals. He has this thing where like he can like see super far in advance, and it's kind of like his eyes are zooming in, which once again, I thought was pretty cool. I think that superhero movies as a whole need to really dive into the fact that these are, at the end of the day, really stupid fictional things. I'm a big fan of the comic books. Every once in a while, they do some super ridiculous thing. Like, almost every X-Men story that happens on Genosha is ridiculously over the top and so over dramatic, and it's not something that could possibly be made into a grounded story. And I feel like comic book movies do better when they dive into how crazy it is. And I think that Kraven the Hunter did a pretty good job with this. I feel like, for the most part, they wanted the threat level and they wanted all of the like stakes of the movie to feel very grounded, but they wanted these characters that have these weird mythical powers, and I really liked it. I think that everything that they did with Kraven's power set is interesting, aside from the fact that they didn't do a good job of explaining how he got his powers, and like the whole concept with like Calypso showing up in this movie. She low-key did not need to be in this movie at all. Like, I'm going to be totally honest with you. I love Ariana DeBose. I'm glad that they got her in this. I'm glad she got a paycheck. She did not need to be in this movie. She added nothing to the movie. There's like 5 or 6 scenes with her, and almost every single one of them, like I said, could be cut from the movie, and it would be essentially the same thing. Like, instead of him getting some weird little healing factor, like potion that she gives him, he could have just, you know, been infused by that lion's blood, and then that lion for some reason could have been a mystical lion, and it would have been completely fine, because that's something they decided to do for this movie anyways. Kraven isn't supposed to have some weird superpowers like that. He's just supposed to be a really, really strong hunter. But that being said, I think that this movie's super ridiculous, right? He has interesting power sets. I think that everything they do with the Rhino is great. I actually really love the story of like the Rhino being somebody who's been so overlooked for so long that he's deciding to go to scientist in New York and kind of become a metahuman. And I think that that whole subplot of there being a scientist in New York who can basically create metahumans is a really interesting thing. I think that biochemical weapons is something that is really interesting and, in my opinion, underdeveloped in superhero movies. I feel like that's something that they were trying to do with obviously the original Green Goblin and the Lizard and the Amazing Spider-Man 2. And I feel like it's something they should have kind of dived more into. I feel like it creates a lot cooler villain, in my opinion, than like, oh, we have an Iron Man movie? What if we made the villain somebody with an Iron Man suit? Oh, we have a movie with Doctor Strange. He's a wizard. Let's have him fight a wizard. I feel like the concept of having like an actual like superhero who has regular like human-based powers and he just has a suit and stuff like that, and having him fight against somebody who has these advancements is really cool. Like, in my opinion, a lot of the best Batman comic book runs are the ones where he's fighting against supernatural freaks, because at the end of the day, Batman's just a dude and he's fighting against people who have powers that he couldn't possibly live up against, and we kind of got some of that in this movie. I think that Kraven the Hunter obviously has enhanced strength, but the sequences with him fighting the Rhino lived up to what I would have wanted from a Kraven versus the Rhino fight sequence. I also think that Kraven, as a standalone movie, works a lot better than a lot of the other ones would, because one of the big things about Kraven is that he wants to hunt whatever he can, and obviously they switched that for this movie. He wasn't necessarily hunting just because he can, but he wanted to start hunting guys that were really bad. He kind of has his, like, Ronin era from, like, Endgame and the Hawkeye show, where he just wants to go around and kill all of the bad guys who are, you know, escorting people who are doing, you know, like, drug stuff. And it's just, like, so interesting to me how he's going around and kind of creating his own fist of justice and kind of, like, killing all these really terrible people. I love that. I thought that was a really cool concept. And the fact that they were like, you know what, we could do just any random villain, or we do one of his big villains, the Rhino. Hell yeah. And I think that it worked, like I said, really well in this movie. I feel like the actor for the Rhino is giving a really interesting performance. Like, he is somebody who seems, like, stressed out, and he's just absolutely, like, off his rocker a little bit, and he does seem like somebody who would 100% go to a random doctor in New York who can turn him into a superhero and randomly become, like, this super enhanced being. Like, it totally seems on par with him and on page with him, and it's something that's really weird about this movie. I low-key think that there's a lot of plots in this movie that worked for me. In my opinion, Rhino was 100% perfect. I think that everything with Chameleon was really interesting. I feel like his dynamic with his father a little bit was a little weird. Like, him and Russell Crowe had, like, this really weird connection where all of a sudden they were super close, but at the same time, Russell Crowe's character really hated him, so that was a little weird. And then Sergi's, like, the main Kraven storyline, in my opinion, worked relatively well. And I really think that if they just slimmed it down to being just those three, and then kind of like the fatherhood, sonhood, little interactions, this movie could have been really good. I think that this is the longest one of the Spunksy movies, and I feel like if it was a little bit shorter, it probably could have been better. Like I said, Calypso could have been completely cut out of the movie. I know a lot of people would have issues with that because, oh my god, we need to have female characters. Does not matter. Cut her out of the movie. She added absolutely nothing. The Foreigner, despite being a very fun character and him showing up and doing a lot of really cool action sequences, I feel like he's also another character who potentially could have been cut from this movie. And I just feel like there's a version of this movie where it's an hour and 30 minutes long, and it's a lot more on par with the first Venom movie. In my opinion, this movie just barely hits, like, it's okay, it's a good tier. Whereas Venom, it's good and it's entertaining. You know what I mean? So if I was to rate this movie on a scale of 1 to 100, I would give this movie a solid 70. Like, I think that this movie is genuinely entertaining. The action sequences work well for me. There's a lot of comedic moments that work incredibly well. I know that they just teased it at the end and we're never going to get to see it come to fruition, but I loved what they did with the Chameleon and the reveal at the end of the movie. And once again, having somebody in New York who is turning people into metahumans is such a cool concept, and I really wish that they would do that. I want to see more of the traditional Spider-Man villains in, you know, the movies, but they keep going, like, the tech-based route where they're like, okay, but what if he has, like, a suit that does it for him? Awesome, but I would love to see a Chameleon who actually shapeshifts like that, and he's not going to have some weird, like, Mysterio-type technology, which just makes it where he look like somebody else. His skin actually molds into being the other things. Like, that's so cool. And I love the way that they did that. Also, I'm not going to remember his name right now. I think it's like Fred Henshinser or something like that. I'm going to put it on the screen. The actor who played Chameleon, this is now the third thing I've seen him in this year. He's incredible. I really hope that he's starting to get a lot more roles. I would totally watch an entire full-length Chameleon movie with that actor. Like, I enjoyed this movie. I thought that it was pretty good. But yeah, that being said, that was it for this video, guys. Thank you guys so much for coming by and checking it out. I love and appreciate you guys so much for watching. And if you liked it, feel free to like and subscribe, and I'll hopefully see you guys in the next one. Peace out. Bow, bow, bow.